Hey guys, what's up? In this video what we're going to cover is heads up display, or UMG, and I'll just give you a quick example of what we're going to do. So as you can see down in the bottom left hand corner, we've just got a basic FPS template with health, shield and energy displayed on the screen, and essentially this will be linked to character statistics. So as something changes in the game like health or energy, as you can see that when we jump, my energy depletes. This will update accordingly on the heads up display. So that's what we're going to cover today, so let's jump straight into it. Okay, so just before we start, I'm going to create a new folder just to keep all of our widgets inside. So with this new folder, I'm just going to rename this to HUD for heads up display, and then I'm going to go into that folder. So now, to create a heads up display, we're going to need to create a user interface widget or a user interface blueprint. To do that, you want to right click just in the contents browser here, and under the user interface menu we want to select widget blueprint, and I'm going to give this a name of main HUD, and I'll explain just why in just a second. And then you want to create a second widget blueprint and call this one character stats or statistics or anything like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to explain how the heads up displays work with UMG, and then we'll get further into it. So if you just want to double click on your main HUD and open that up. So this is the UMG designer, and up at the top right you can see there it says designer. You can also switch over to the graph, which is like the blueprint. It's the blueprint screen for widgets, as you can see here, widget blueprint. And this is where we write the code or blueprints to control the designs of, or like how they update. But back to the designer, let me just explain this a little bit. So on the left hand side you've got a palette, and that has all your different types of tools, widgets. So you've got text widgets, sliders, progress bars. This common section here is probably one that you're going to work in most. Another good thing is as well, you can actually star these and get what's called a favorite bar. So anything that you use on a regular basis, so like text and progress bars and stuff like that, that's probably something you want to consider favoriting and having at the top, just so that it's then readily available for you to streamline the process and just drag them straight on. You can also untick the little star and take them out of your favorites. So yeah, you've got a list of all sorts of things here. The most common things you're going to be using is probably your panels and your common bits and pieces. Underneath that you've then got the hierarchy. So as you start dragging bits and pieces into this, what would you call it? Your actual active window where you start building, or you get a preview of what your heads up display looks like. It'll also populate the hierarchy with what's parent and what's child of each other. So if for the moment we've only got a canvas panel in there, we can then drag text in there. You can see it displays, but then we can put a progress bar underneath the text or alongside the text. And some of these other panels allow you to put multiple objects inside them. And you can see there in the hierarchy that it's updated with what's on there. So for now, let's just delete those. Underneath that you've got animations, so you can create animations which, if you want like your UI to animate or update or do change colours while you're on a menu or something like that, you can sort that out. And to the right of that you've got the timeline, so you can set up your timeline of how long it's going to take to transition between them animations or how it's going to update. On the right hand side of the screen you've got details. Now this is quite common in Unreal, obviously that just gives you a bit more of a detailed look. So for example, if I drag a text in here, the details for that would be its position, what the text actually says. So you can see I've changed it to ASDF. You can change the colour of it, the font, and everything else that you'd expect. So with that being said, why did I name this the main HUD? So what I like to do is I actually like to have a blank main HUD loaded onto the screen, and then we add additional widgets onto it afterwards. It just gives me a bit more, I won't say freedom, but a bit more control over the widgets later on as you get a bit busier, because at first you've only got statistics, and then you start putting like a mini map, and then you've got a timer, and then you've got all sorts of other stuff. It gets a little bit crazy here in the hierarchy. Whereas if we was to create, I'll explain this now, if we was to open up this second widget here, let's just say this character statistics is just a text at the moment with ABC in it. Yeah, we've got character statistics as ABC. That's great. Let's compile that. On our main HUD, you know, on our actual game screen, we wouldn't see anything. But if you scroll down here in your palette, there's a user created area, and now there's another widget called character stats. We can now drag that in, and as you can see, we've got the ABC. So you can create all these little pre-made widget blocks, and then you can just place them in blocks on the main HUD. So you can create a mini-map widget, and you can just drag that onto your main, and then you can actively just turn off an entire statistic or something like that. It gives you a bit more control further on, or a bit more, it cleans things up. I've just found once you start getting lots of widgets onto one HUD, it's a bit more messy. Okay, so let's actually get on to creating this thing. If you want to switch back over now to your character stats heads up display, we're going to actually start building out the display now. So in my game I've got, I'm going to have health, shield and energy. So to keep things nice and tidy, we're going to use some of these panels which are help organize things. So the first one we're going to put in is a horizontal box. Now a horizontal box, as the name slightly suggests, it's a box that contains things horizontally. So every item that you put inside the box, every item that you put in, they will be they'll be next to each other in a horizontal fashion. And similarly, there's a vertical box which stores things on top of each other. So the more things you put in, you get, it's almost like a list. And we're going to use both of them. So I want to do a horizontal box and then followed by two vertical boxes. So you want to grab a vertical box and you can drag them inside the horizontal box, and then you can select the vertical box that you've already put in, press Ctrl and W, and you're duplicating it. So you'll have a horizontal box with two vert boxes inside. Now if we zoom in just a little bit, you can see we've got one vert box and another vert box, and they are side by side because they are in a horizontal box. Great. So we've got 3 statistics to display, so I'm going to need 3 labels. Now a label is going to be a text object, or a text widget should I say. So I'm going to grab the text from the common up at the top of the palette, and I'm going to drag that into the first vert box. Now what I can do is, with that first text box block selected, I'm going to press Ctrl and W, and that's going to create a duplication, and then again if I press it one more time I will create 3. So now I've got 3 text blocks, one for health, one for shield, one for energy, and I'm going to rename them just like that. So with one of them selected, over on the right hand side in the details panel you can select the text underneath the content header and rename it. So this first one is going to be my health. Now actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a semicolon and a space also. The added space on the end just gives us a bit of space in between the text and the progress bar that we're going to add as our health bar. We're going to select the next text box, and now we're going to select rename this to shield. Same again, semicolon and a space. And for the final text block we're going to rename that to energy, semicolon and a space. Now because all of these texts are slightly different lengths, and in a moment we're going to have a progress bar to the right hand side of them, I'm just going to select all 3 of them. Now you can do this by either individually clicking them and changing the value, or you can hold shift and select all 3 at once, and we're going to set this to horizontally align right. So then all of the semicolons should line up, and that makes it a bit neater for the next stage. So next we've got another vertical box to the right hand side of these text labels, and as you may have guessed, we're going to add some progress bars. Progress bars, once we set them up to be updated by our character statistics, the actual progress, well, it shouldn't be called a progress bar at that point, it becomes a health bar. Once it's been automatically updated based on game data, it's a stat bar rather than a progress bar, but nonetheless it's called a progress bar. You can find them in the common part of the palette. If you just drag one of those down to the second vertical box, you'll see that a little weird grey cube appears, and that's just a really small progress bar until we tell it to format a bit nicer. So same again with how we did with the text. If you want to select the progress bar and press Ctrl and W twice, you'll then get 3 progress bars. Okay, and at this point what we want to do is we want to click on the horizontal box. Now we've got all of our sort of pieces in here. The horizontal box is kind of restricting all of these other widgets being their appropriate size. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make us a little bit more space and zoom out. I'm going to click on this horizontal box, and you can see it's actually restricted into this little square, and I'm just going to drag that out and just make it, you know, this is total guesswork, but that looks okay. So if I then look on the right hand side, I can see that this is actually 500.68 blah blah blah. I'm just going to manually overtype this to 500, and then the size Y has gone to 124. I'm just going to change that to 125. It doesn't really matter that, but all those trailing decimal numbers start to annoy me, so I've just corrected that for absolutely no reason at all. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the second vertical box. Now at the moment the way it's sized is set to automatic, so it's trying to guess at what size it should be. I don't want this, I want it to fill all the available space it has. Now because we've just made our horizontal box really big, it now has all this available space. So if we select the vertical box and we tell it to fill, you'll see that now it's actually filling all that available space, which is brilliant. And you know, the progress bars are doing exactly that. They're set to auto, so they're actually taking up as little space as possible. So if we, you know, you can click on these and select fill, but now we've just got one giant one. Whereas if you select all 3 of them at the same time by selecting the first one and then shift clicking the bottom one, it select all 3. You can then set them all to fill, and now they're all evenly spaced out, and they should all somewhat correspond to the text. Now there is a little bit of available space here, which underneath the text blocks, and we can do the same thing with the text blocks. We can select all of these, and we can tell it to fill. And then that's basically that. They're all the same size now, they're all taking up the equal amount of space, and they should all line up perfectly with our progress bars. Great stuff. So our progress bars now we can see them are just these weird grey blocks. They are not actually displaying any sort of data. Now a progress bar is actually where it gets its colour from is its progress percent. Now over here on the right underneath progress you can see percent, and if we just change this to like 0.5, you can see that now the health is gone to the halfway mark. Now we're going to get this controlled by our health level in the game, and we do that by binding, and you can see bind here. But just before we do that, I think we should set this the colour scheme up to be more appropriate. So for me, in most games I quite like red as being a health bar, not necessarily pink. So let's just take that green down to 0. Nice dark red for health, that's good for me. Now for the shield, I think blue's going to be appropriate colour. If I just scroll that progress up, I think blue's going to be an appropriate colour. And then what do we think for energy? I mean, for me, you know, something like green's good for energy. You know, green's quite a vibrant, energetic colour, so I'm going to go for green for energy. And these values don't actually really mean anything once we've binded them, or we're getting them to automatically update. You know, these values will be overwritten, but for best practice, it's usually better to reset these to 0 before you continue on. Great stuff. So I'm just going to hit compile. You know, we've not actually done anything in code, so nothing should really scream out as an error, but we're about to. So for us to be able to link this health bar to our character's health, our character is going to need some health. Now, if you've already got this set up, you'd probably be a step ahead, but if you haven't, this is how we can do it. So if you're in the first person template, you can select your character in the world, and in the outliner you can press edit blueprint to get into the blueprint. Alternatively, in the content folder you can go to first person BP, blueprint, and the first person character, and this should open up your blueprint. Now we just need to create some variables really, which holds our health values inside. So over on the left here, underneath all your other components, where it says variable, a little button appears once you get around there, and it says plus variable. Add one of these, and I'm just going to call mine health. Now I think by default on a fresh template this actually defaults to a bool like this, so yours might look red. If you just click on this little bean next to your health label, or next to the title of it, you can actually change what value it is. So you want to change yours to a float, and then when you press compile, over on the right hand side you can see you've got a default health value. I'm just going to set mine to 1 for full health, and the reason that I've set it to 1 is because if we go back to the character stats just for a second, the health bar with its percent in the progress field, if you hover over it, it says it determines the fill position of the progress bar by ranging between 0 and 1. So 0 being empty and 1 being completely full. So if you've already got a health system set up, then you could, let's say your health system's already set up between 0 and 100, you could just divide it by 100 and you'll get the same effect. Alternatively, you're just setting up a health system. Going between 0 and 1's a good way to do it, because your health and the heads up display will be 1 to 1, so you won't need to do any conversions. So with that being said, I'm going to set my health to 1. Now I'm just going to select the health variable, and I'm going to press Ctrl and W to duplicate, and I'm just going to rename this one to shield, and then same again, I'm going to duplicate and put energy. Okay, great. Hit compile. Now as a default I'm just going to set my shield to 0.25, just so you're starting with some shield but not a full shield, and energy, that's going to be set at 1. Great. So now our character's actually got some statistics to update. Let's go back into the character statistics HUD, and let's bind these. So before we bind, we actually need to get a reference to our character, so then we have sort of like a good communication between our heads up display and our character. So let's go over to the graph now, and we will get that reference set up. So once you go into the graph, you'll notice that there are 3 sort of grayed out blueprint blocks. Now we only need the middle one, the event construct, and that'll be as soon as like this heads up display is created. That's like the begin play, you know, the start of its life type thing. And when we do that, what we want to do, we want to set up a connection between us, the heads up display, and the character, so we can get them statistics. Now to be able to do that, we're going to need to get the player character. Now this is a brilliant function because it allows us to tap into or cast to a character to tap into statistics. So from the player character, go pull off the blue node, and we type in cast to, and then out of the 4 options we've got is first person character. If you're playing on any other type, or if you've got another character set up, you'll just need to pick your character type. So for example, if you're doing a third person template, it'll be cast to third person. And with that, let's just link up these execute nodes, and now we've got a reference to our player character who's got these statistics. So from this we could do get shield, get the shield value and update it that way. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to make it a little bit easier going forward, and we're just going to pull off this and we're just going to promote that to a variable. And let's just put player ref. Forget the capital E in the middle, but now what we've got this variable set up which is going to be a reference to all our player statistics, which is going to be miles better. So what we can do now is hit compile, and what we can actually do now we've set this this player variable up is if we go back to the designer and we select one of our progress bars, you can select the first one, and just a side note, notice how mine are just called progress bar blah blah blah. You could rename these to health bar, just to make it a bit easier for yourself to identify, because as you start getting loads more stuff in here, it's going to get harder to identify individual components. That's probably a good practice, rename your stuff, but for the purpose of this tutorial I've skipped over that one a little bit. Anyway, back to it. We need to link the reference to this bar. Now, because we've just set that reference up, if you was to click on the bind button now, you'll notice it says create binding, but it also says properties, player ref. And the great thing is we can now just go down this list and find our health and click it, and now our player's health is directly linked to our progress bar. And we can do the same now with the shield. So we click bind, go to player ref and go to shield, and then click on the energy one, click bind, player ref and energy. And if we hit compile, we shouldn't get any complaints, and you've now linked up all your progress bars to your character statistics. With that being said, if we press play, so far we're still not going to see anything because we've not actually told Unreal to put this heads up display on the actual screen. So let's do that now. So to do this, it's really quite simple. You want to get the event player, event begin player, because we want to do this right at the beginning. We want it to be one of the first things that happens. Your character's loaded in, and we want the heads up display to be up there as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a widget. So it's going to ask you for a class, and the class that you want is your main HUD. At this point you could click character stats, and you will get this little bar up in the top corner. However, we want to display the main, which then we're going to put the character stats on top of. So let's do the main HUD, and then off the return value we actually want to do add to, and then if you see there, add to viewport. So this is going to create the widget, and then this is going to tell it put it on our screen so then we can see it. Hit compile, hit play, you still see nothing, but you have actually got a heads up display there. It's just it's blank at the moment. So if we go to the heads up main, and now we can start populating it with our pre-built widget that we've made, and we can just drag the character stats straight onto the game, onto the heads up display, sorry. And you can use the ooh, that's not the one I want to move. We can change the position of all this with the position X and position Y. So I'm going to set this to like 900, and I'm going to set this to 150, and that's nice enough for me. Now if we press play, you'll see that we've got the heads up display on the screen. And when you write some blueprint to update this, it'll update in real time. So let's just do that real quick. This is going to be quick and dirty, there's not going to be much about it, and I'm just going to adjust the energy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to the jump function, and basically every time we jump, I want to set the energy to be lower. Sorry, I had to stop there for a second, take my hoodie off. My heating must have come on and I'm absolutely boiling. Yep, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the energy in, and we're going to get the energy to start with, and then what we want to do is we want to minus a value off it, and then we want to grab the energy again and set it. So essentially we want to take, every time we jump, we want to take what our current energy value is, and we're going to minus 0.25 maybe, you know, you can play with this value from that, and then we're going to reset that as the energy level. And essentially this is a real cheap way of just updating it, but let's give this a compile, let's have a play, and now every time we jump you can see our energy level is going to deplete. Now obviously that, you know, now I'm continuing to jump, there's no more progress bar, my energy is, you know, below 0 now. You can build on that and set that up, but as you can see that it does set up. So if you've got enemies in your game and you're taking damage or your shield's going down, you'll visually be able to see that. And that's pretty much it for the heads up display. So that brings this video to an end. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you for watching. If you found that helpful or useful, please consider giving me a like. Any issues, please comment down below. I'm always prepared to reply to every comment to help you out, and I wouldn't like you to be stuck. And yeah, if you want to see more like this, consider subscribing, and then I'll see you in the next video. So until then, thanks for watching.